we focus on those foundational concepts as a language with the concrete definitions so that the student understands it.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I'm your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and author of The 5 Simple Truths of Raising Kids. Aditya Nagrath believes that math anxiety is real and that one of its chief instigators is memorization. That is why his book, Treating Mathematics Anxiety, and the system he created at Elephant Learning focus on fostering an understanding of math concepts. He believes in it so much that he guarantees that students will learn 1 year of mathematics in 3 months using his system. Aditya and I discuss his approach and steps you can take to help the kids in your life overcome math anxiety. Talking About Kids is sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. If you think the information in this episode might help kids overcome math anxiety, please like it, and then share the Talking About Kids podcast with your friends and colleagues. And now, the interview.
There was all this research already done into teaching mathematics to children. So we were trying to combine it with the adaptive algorithms so that we could find their level of understanding and then adapt either up or down based on whether they remember or they don't remember. And our goal was to be able to fill a learning gap. So what it was that the professor told me that 4 out of 5 students were underprepared for kindergarten curriculum, and that was really hard for me to believe. And I asked him, "What does that mean?" So what that boiled down to was that there was a gap in the language, and we're talking about the quantities, right? And being able to just read and do some things around the quantities. So can I read a 1-digit number? Can I read 2-digit numbers? And so the research had been done, I think, through fractions, but based on that, based on what we understood of what the research is, philosophically, we've gone back and we've extended it through algebra. So what we do is focus on teaching mathematics as a language. And we were already teaching mathematics as a language at the graduate levels. And so then it was a matter of, can you do the same thing for basic mathematics, and how? How do you do that? Because where is it in graduate level mathematics? We are defining the words in English. We're defining the ideas and describing them in English, maybe some visuals, right? When it comes down to basic mathematics, it's a lot more concrete. It's a lot more manipulatives, as they call it.
Well, that's interesting because already in your introduction, I think there's 4 or 5 concepts that I would want to unpack. But one you haven't mentioned yet is your book. So you have a book, Treating Mathematics Anxiety. And one of the things that I'm curious about is the difference between math anxiety and some of the other causes of difficulty with math. So can you define math anxiety for me?
So the way we define it, it comes down to like the belief system of the student.
Okay.
And the idea is that when you're talking about math, or you're talking about learning basketball, or you want to learn piano, or English, social studies, whatever it is, for the student, it boils down to, I can do this or I can't do this. And everything else that we're actually hearing is some sort of a justification for it. So like in the book, in the second edition, which hasn't come out yet, so like quick preview. One of the things that we're recommending now is when they're saying that to you, Maybe you want to, in your head, preface it with, I can't do it because,
Mm.
right? And then put their reason there. And so, like, yeah, it's going to be really challenging to determine, is the reason they're coming to you with real? Because there's this thing out there, dyscalculia.
Hmm.
And if you research what it is, they were able to measure the difference in the brain using an MRI. But it was defined as executing calculations. And again, we're not trying to get the student to execute calculations so much as to understand the mathematics,
Mm.
uh, which is it's slightly different than being able to execute the calculation. You see what I mean? And so when it comes down to what we're doing, we tell the parent they have to believe that the student can do it.
Mm.
And I've been told all sorts of things in the comments section on our ads as to why the student cannot do it. And I've gotten down to telling parents, look, Helen Keller found a way to learn mathematics,
Right.
and therefore I think your student can do it. And now then it's a matter of, do they believe they can do it? And then once they believe they can do it, I'm sure there's a way.
And two other concepts that you mentioned in kind of describing the history of your interest in this topic. You talked about adaptive testing, which I'm really interested in because I know that there are places in the world where that is having a greater role in kids' education. I'm super excited about that. It's less popular in the United States than it is, for example, in some European countries, but maybe we'll
Um,
get there. But the other piece is, you were talking about an understanding of the mathematic terms. So tell me a little bit more about that. What did you learn about what kids knew or did not know about what the words that represent numbers mean or don't mean?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an entire almost skill set in language, but it's the same skill set that they have to learn for English.
Mm.
It's just when it comes to the mathematics, it's a little bit more abstract. So think about teaching a 3-year-old the color red.
Right.
You have to show them a whole bunch of red things, and then that person has to infer, that child has to infer through whatever activity you're doing that you're referring to the color. Well, with the quantities, that's what it is, right? I'm showing them 2 or 3 things. They have to infer that the word two is referring to the quantity. So it's a little bit more abstract than the color. And so, like, then after that, we have to be able to connect it back to the written mathematics, right? Because when you write 5 plus 4 equals something, right, and the student has to somehow do this
Hmm.
calculation, there has to be an underlying understanding of, like, well, that's, give me 5 things, give me 4 more things, how many things are there? So that's kind of harder to do in the classroom setting without having, some sort of concrete representation. That's why all the research shows that the manipulatives, right, having the student be able to touch this, yeah, it's engaging more
Right.
senses, I agree, right? And then there's the question of, well, can you simulate that, which we believe we have done. And so that's where, like, the computer system makes it a lot easier because I don't have to have 20 things that are the same. I can draw 20 things that are the same. You see what I mean?
Right.
And so, but like, this is what it kind of boils down to, all the way through fractions, decimals, and percentages, because um, really, the student has to get the sense that, 0.1, 10%, 1/10, these are actually representing the exact same thing, right? And like, and then you understand, okay, well, yeah, we have to be able to convert between them because, like, they
Right.
represent the same thing. So,
And to your point, there's that additional level of abstraction in numbers because the word red doesn't also get presented as a symbol. So for a number, we have the word two, but we have the digit two. So we have that additional level of abstraction, and the word red will always refer to a construct that it doesn't change a ton, But when you talk about two, it could be two. I'm going to use the name of your company. It could be two elephants, or it could be two pennies. It could be two halves, right? So and then even in your own example, when you're talking about decimals, we have decimals, but then people talk about quarters and halves and thirds, which is a different way to describe the same constructs. So there is all of those levels of complexity in the language, isn't there?
Well, so what it is that the language for this stuff is building on top, whereas with the red, I mean, it's the visual thing, right? And
Right.
so, like, you're right. Like, that's the thing that's not, like, there's just not much to build on top of that until you start to represent red as a number, and then I can manipulate it. You
Right.
know what I mean? And, so, like, yeah, I mean, and then there's the whole problem with the way that we're describing it in writing to children. So, like,
Mm.
the idea of fractions and the idea of division are the exact same thing.
Mm.
And here's the biggest problem is that you teach the student first the division symbol, and then you switch it to a fraction, and then, by the way, we never ever go back because the fraction is dynamic enough to handle all these different situations, like x over whatever, this
Right.
complicated expression over something else. And so, um, to the student who doesn't have the understanding that, yeah, we are just kind of talking about a language, and we're free to kind of change that language over time. That's a confusing situation. It looks like another situation to memorize within. And so then, that's another reason for the avoidance. So that's the third thing on the helping with the math anxiety, which is that you got to meet the student at their level of understanding,
Mm.
and you got to be able to disambiguate these ideas for them.
And you believe in, and it was implicit in what you just said there, that memorization is like part of this anxiety.
Well, so, like, memorization without understanding is anxiety because
Mm.
you don't understand it, right? It's wherever that lack of meaning is there, that we don't know what it means, then that's where the student's going to feel anxiety, and that's just normal for human beings, right? Like, what happens when we die? What, right? It's like that kind of question. There's no answer.
Right.
So, like, um, but, like, yeah, in this case, right, there's a way that we can disambiguate it for them so that anxiety can go away, but it has to happen in the context of I believe I can do this, um, and then authentic attempts to understand. Because if they don't think they can do it, they don't really make those authentic steps to understand.
In my experience, I've actually been privileged to do some research with specifically with adults that developed a fear of math earlier in their life. Um, the fear was, really about that word to a certain extent. It got strange. In the research I was involved in, if you told these adults that they were going to do math or that they were going to take a math class, they couldn't. In reality, of course, they were doing math in their own life. So with your software, and again, I want you to tell me a little bit more about elephant learning, but with what you're doing, how do you like kind of get kids or even adults out of the fear of the topic, almost tricking them into doing it when without even knowing that they're doing this thing called math that they're afraid of?
So what we did was we took those activities, right? We take these, these activities that when you do them, you're exhibiting the idea
Mm.
of the mathematics, uh, and we call it a puzzle game. So it feels like Angry Birds, right? Like, you're not doing anything but flicking birds, right? But, like, you're
Right.
give me five things, give me four more things. How many do I have now? You can count them. And so, I mean, these things then presented in the right order cause the learning. So we guarantee then to the parent or the student that they're going to learn 1 year of math over the course of 3 months using our system, just 10 minutes a day, 3 days a week. Because we found on average, if the usage is around 30 minutes per week, students will learn about 1.5 years of math over the course of 10 weeks. So, um, between the guarantee and that, like, once they buy in, you got to assume they believe they can do it. But then after that, we have the mathematics coaches to help in. They step in with the topics from the book to actually do the coaching.
And do you think it's that game environment that helps the kids overcome that fear, or that anxiety? So they see a video game, it's math, but maybe they don't. Is that what I'm inferring?
No, no, we don't try to trick them. I
Okay.
don't think anyone's ever looked at our system and said that's not math, right? Because give
Okay.
me five things, give me four more things. You see what I'm saying? But like the deal is that like what we talk about in treating mathematics anxiety is the basketball analogy. Like, what if you could compare mathematics to basketball? And the idea is that like with mathematics and basketball, anyone can look to see did the ball go in the hoop,
Mm.
right? It's just that like with mathematics, when they don't get it right, the student feels wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're wrong. It's like, but like if you miss the hoop in basketball, you're just gonna shoot again. And so like this is where like yeah, this type of gamification of the mathematics without pretending like, hey, this is not mathematics.
Right.
You're gonna do it, right? But this is like basketball. You have to put the ball in the hoop. That that helps the anxiety quite a bit because now there's not the pressure of answering correctly. And there's also starting to become an understanding of every time the ball doesn't go in the hoop, there's a way to, learn from it. And so we do see a lot of students who come in saying that they struggle with mathematics, the parents saying they're behind in mathematics. They go through our system, they go through this process, and when they come out, they actually enjoy math class.
It's interesting to hear you say that. And I think that longtime listeners of Talking About Kids will know that tracks with things that we've heard from previous guests about creating spaces where mistakes are encouraged, where they're allowed. And it is a big problem with too many of our classrooms that the consequences are dire, and the mistakes are rather permanent, right? So I really enjoy, I appreciate hearing you say that this is, that you are trying to create this understanding that, like basketball, if you miss a shot, you get to take another one and keep practicing until you get it right. Because we know that is exactly how, well, all humans want to learn, not just kids, of course.
But also in this analogy is this idea of we have to maintain the hoop,
Yeah.
meaning that we as the educators do have to tell them the ball went in or it didn't go in. And this is sort of the issue is that that's a very delicate balance
Mm-hmm.
because like on the one hand, yeah, maybe the mistakes stay with you too long because it's like, well, that's what you got on the test and that's what it is, and now you face XYZ consequence. But on the other side of it is the lowering of the hoop,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just as damaging as this other environment where it's like, well, yeah, I know, right, right. Whereas if you can just maintain the hoop, the ball didn't go in,
Right.
and like the meaning is you need to shoot again, right? Like somehow you're gonna get the ball in the hoop before we try to move you on, because otherwise you're doing a disservice to the student from the student and the next teacher from the perspective of when they go into that course. If they can't understand that teacher, now they're going back to developing the anxiety because it's not necessarily that they're going to raise their hand and say, I just don't get it. That's just not a normal thing for students to think.
Well, not only that, but we know that one of the things that these digital environments do really well is this thing that you're talking about, which is scaffolding, right? But classrooms, in-person classrooms, too often they're teaching kind of to the greatest common denominator, which means that at some point there's a kid that's bored and there's a kid that's behind. Simply because, in any room you're going to have those tails on either side. So having the benefit of a digital space where you can gauge where they are and you can keep progressing as they get better, I think is a wonderful use of digital technology. And actually, again, people who want to learn more about how video games scaffold can go back and listen to Jim G in one of the early episodes of Talking About Kids. One of the things that people have had a difficult time doing with digital environments is getting the skills that kids learn in those environments to translate outside of that digital space, either in real life or in just a different context. How has your success been in getting kids to take what they've learned inside your applications and bring that into a different classroom or just into a different environment?
Well, so we focus on the fundamental topics. So, like, whereas, uh, like some of these places where, oh, we're going to try to really force maybe like a common core, or we're going to try to, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
there ends up being some sort of a mm, gap, for lack of a better word, meaning like I've seen these number bond things go around, and it's just they don't explain it to the parent.
Mm.
So when this shows up on your desk, yeah, okay, fine, as a mathematician I understand what you're getting after, but as someone who also communicates to parents, right, like I don't know, like unless you kind of explain what's supposed to happen here, I can imagine why they're freaking out as soon as they see this tree, and it's like, what, this is supposed to be addition, you know what I mean? And so it's like but yeah, if you just explain to them this is addition and this is what it is and this is why we're doing it, and I don't know if that has to be two sheets or one sheet, you know what I mean, but like that gap really really triggers the anxiety of the parent
Hmm.
around mathematics, because now they're in a situation where their kid is coming to them for help, and now they can't show that they can do it, so they like intuitively are kind of bouncing around, like, hey, I can't be an effective coach around this, and then that goes back to like, here's another reason why I don't have to do it.
Mm. Well, and so so your application works to bring parents into the process so that they're speaking a common language and understanding concepts the same way that they're being taught to their child. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, these concepts are not terribly advanced
Mm.
concepts, you know what I mean, like, yeah, okay, fine, like so many people, whatever the percentage is, doesn't understand fractions, decimals, and percentages, right? But the point that I'm trying to make is that like this is a natural concept, and they actually do understand it until you like try to quiz them on it. And so like really what it is like we do it very concretely. We're not trying to put this number bond stuff in there. We focus on those foundational concepts as a language with the concrete definitions so that the student understands it. So like we do the decompositions, but we're doing it directly. And now when you see it on the number bond, you kind of understand like, oh, that's what they're after. So now the student's going to be able to do it. And that's the real trick, is that if I just focus on what are the core concepts, then theoretically these ancillary topics become very easy for the student to pick up.
You know, but it's also the case that we have a lot of adults who are parents that have math anxiety themselves. I mean, you can hear it. I've spent enough time with parents in classrooms and outside that they will excuse their own child's performance in math because they themselves always had some sort of issue with mathematics. Are you
Yeah.
seeing? I don't know if you have any evidence. Are parents doing these exercises along with the child? Or are they sometimes kind of brushing up on their own math skills along with their student or their son or daughter?
Well, I don't know that for sure or not, but like what we do is we have a parent mode,
Hmm.
and so like when you go to the history screen, there's like this try button, right? So like if you see like, hey, the student's missing this thing, and you want to somehow step in and start to talk to them, you can hit try yourself, and you can see what the activity is about. And again, these things are not very complicated. They're represented at a concrete level. So like as a parent, when you start to see some of these activities, you're like, yeah, okay, this like I mean, sometimes people are like, yes, this is just not impressive.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, well, the one activity is not impressive. You know what I mean? When you put them all together, it's a curriculum.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, but like they get it, and that's the thing. And if they don't get it, we have the coaches there. It's just a part of the service. So it's like, yeah, we put someone who you can get on the phone with and speak with them, so that if you start to feel uneasy, there's someone that can tell both of you that you can do it, and just kind of demystifies it.
All right. And what advice do you give? So let's say that a parent is working with their child and they're using your platform to really help with some basic concepts. Um, what advice do you give to them to then talk to their school about what they're doing with, elephant learning?
Well, we have a teacher sharing mechanism, and then
Okay.
that allows the teacher to understand the level of the student and see it within their dashboard, actually. So we create them a basically an account where they can see their shared students, you know what I mean? And they could add their own students as well. There's a trial period of some sort. And so but there's several things that we're doing um for the teacher itself that's very helpful. So like we allow the teacher to see the students on a
Hmm.
graph at their different levels, so that they could break them into the cohorts, so that they aren't giving some students anything above and beyond. And then also we have the teacher training, parent training videos at the level of the student. So if you're a third grade teacher and you have a cohort that's working on first or second grade type math, well, those teacher trainings are there for both the parent or the teacher, so that then they can work with the student at that level. So it's beyond being able to try. They also have the videos, and so it's kind of a complete system. And then also within Elephant Learning, there's the anxiety coaching videos, uh, and then like theoretically speaking, after that they could buy the book. But there's just we're just trying to give them so much to do it. We just believe they can do it. I mean, you just gotta try.
Well, so in addition to you've just got to try, and the other advice you've already given to parents and teachers has to do with reframing when a child says that that they don't like math or they can't do math, reframing that. What other kind of advice do you have for parents, teachers, and other people that work with kids to help the kids in their lives overcome math anxiety?
Yeah, so the three steps, the three overarching, and then after that, everything kind of fits into those steps, and you end up seeing how is: one, to believe they can do it; two, to tell them that you believe they can do it. Because when you tell them that you believe they can do it, you've made a commitment to them. But if they stick with you, they've also made a commitment back, right? Because like they're going to have to try, right? Now they have to try authentically, and that's what you want. The third is to meet them at their level of understanding. So that's where you have to kind of figure out what is their level of understanding. That's what our system helps with. But if you can meet them then at their level of understanding, they're going to see the ball start to go into the hoop. And once they start to see the ball go in the hoop, now they also believe they can do it. And so that's where we show progress, right? We focus on this is the progress that you've made, and that tends to work to help them to believe that they can do it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for not stopping when you saw the problem and you had that light bulb, but continued to work to develop something that would help kids overcome math anxiety. And thank you so much for being on Talking About Kids.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
That was Aditya Nagrath. More information about Aditya, elephant learning, and Aditya's book, Treating Mathematics Anxiety, is at talkingaboutkids.com. And when you do visit talkingaboutkids.com, leave me a note. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. The Talking About Kids theme song is by the Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young humans, and the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.